What do you get when you combine a young hotshot blues guitarist, a pair of criminal brothers with entirely too much illegal alcohol to get rid of, and toss in an ancient blood-sucking monster who's inexplicably drawn to a teenager with mysterious supernatural powers? Apparently one of the greatest original movies of the last decade. Whether it's the incredible score and soundtrack, insane attention to detail with the characters and setting, or just the fact that there's a vampire after more than just the typical blood, power, and real estate, there's no way the studios will be able to resist trying to cash in on potential Sinners sequels. And if this cinematic universe meme is anything to go by, everyone who's seen this movie is drooling for more of this story.
It's okay.
My son has felt the call of sins to be fishers of men who sin and show them the way. In the name of God. Let it go, Samuel.
I've seen people say they want a prequel with the twins, getting to see them at their prime working with or even against Capone. Other prequels could feature the Choctaw vampire hunters who may have their own traditions and abilities that help take on supernatural threats. Of course, the mid-credit sequence teases possible sequels with Mary and Stack as they survive unaging into the 90s, with a photo shoot with Michael B. Jordan potentially implying Stack is still around even in 2025. But why stop there? With characters in a setting so grounded, it's easy to see them intersecting with other stories too. Annie was aware of vampires, probably from her upbringing studying the Way in Louisiana. Maybe Stack and Mary could find kindred spirits in Lestat and Louis as a pair of lovers who were never meant to be bound for eternity. But Remick and the vampires he's turned look different and act different than Lestat and the vampires he's turned. That would mean there are different types of vampires out there. Maybe there are more ugly mofos like Count Orlok controlling hordes of rats out there. We know from the mid-credit scene that Stack does eventually end up returning to Chicago, where he admits to Sammy that he hasn't been free since the night he was turned. But that begs the question, what is he enslaved to? Thirst for blood? The tyranny of the sun? That's just the vampire version of the need for hunger and sleep. I think he's indebted to a person, the same person he was indebted to at the beginning of the story, in fact. Who did Stack steal that Italian wine from? None other than Al Capone, who in this timeline is still haunting Chicago for the same reason Stack and Mary are. He's a vampire, turned by someone who needed a charismatic criminal underboss under their control forever. A business-minded vampire, perhaps? But Stack and Mary aren't the only people who survived through the end of the movie. Sammy has sequel and crossover potential as well, and again the connection is Annie. We know from the Sinners intro that great musicians and storytellers attract evil, and we know from Annie that there are more evil entities out there than just vampires. There are also spirits that invade bodies and control people. Sammy, more or less being basically the inversion of Robert Johnson, could find himself in a battle for his soul with devils and demons later in life, but this time he'd have to rely on his own skills to escape. That is, of course, if Stack is keeping his promise to keep his distance. So let's summarize a list of all the things a Sinners sequel or an extended universe should have if it wants to keep going. A setting that's grounded and extensively detailed, focus on choices of the characters and the consequences they face, themes that highlight the darker aspects of human nature and how we can overcome them or fall to them, a web of characters with different goals and motivations that collide in a single story, supernatural entities that hide in the shrouded darkness of the world, vampires that hunger not just for blood and survival, but for connection, family, and, of course, power. Different lineages, bloodlines even, of vampires with different strengths, weaknesses, and behaviors. Malevolent spirits and demons that can possess the bodies of those close to you, drawn by the lure of human celebration and devotion. Roots, magic, the craft, hoodoo, what have you. There is power just beyond the veil that those with knowledge and talent can grasp. Hunters that use human grit and ingenuity to find and destroy evil wherever it threatens mortal humans. And if you're lucky, it'll even be set in your hometown, but probably going to be set in or around Chicago. There's just one problem. Ryan Coogler has stated the story is over. He's not revisiting this world or its characters in the foreseeable future. But I think that's by design. It gives us room to write our own stories, share our inspirations, and get lost in each other's worlds. And that's exactly what I plan to do. At least that's what I would say if I hadn't already done it 6 months ago. That's right, last October, in a fit of inspiration that was equal parts prophecy and blind coincidence, I, completely separate of any knowledge of Ryan Coogler's upcoming movie, decided to create a narrative web of characters, humans, vampires, mages, and werewolves, pulled and inspired by historical figures taking place in modern times, exploring themes of racism, slavery, classism, addiction, revenge, and fascism. Then, to bring to life what was essentially a list of characters with backstories, I invited some of my friends to sit around a table, create their own characters, and improvise a story in a dark reflection of our own city. And it should be obvious by now, but I didn't do this unaided. That 2 month delay between inspiration and creating was filled by reading the Vampire the Masquerade core rulebook cover to cover. Though released in 2018 and based on a meta plot and rule system that's existed since 1991, I think The World of Darkness is the perfect franchise to sink your teeth into if you've seen Sinners multiple times and still want more. But while it has different DNA, one's a movie, the other is a role-playing game, they both focus on the darker aspects of humanity, encourage the use of our real world for shared history. They both ask us to decide between freedom and survival in a visceral way, and perhaps most importantly, both are absolutely dripping with style. I think the real point and goal of Sinners is to serve as inspiration to tell our own stories, to give us a world where anything can happen, but that is a daunting task. Vampire the Masquerade and the other World of Darkness games can help fill out your toolbox and give you practice with developing your own setting, character, relationships, and narratives. It's the perfect jumping off point to telling your own stories, joining with spirits past and future, and having a bit of morbid fun along the way. Just make sure not to have your light stolen by any vampires that appear on your doorstep.